Hi everybody, happy Monday. So today I wanted to do a video on 5 defense mechanisms. There are many more than this, but I kind of just wanted to pick out the ones that stuck out to me the most, the ones that I see most commonly and most frequently in conversations. And, I actually told a friend that I was going to be doing a video about this, and they asked what are defense mechanisms. So I think it's perfect timing, and it'll help people get a better understanding of why they feel the way they feel, and maybe dig a little bit deeper into where that feeling comes from. So I have my notes as usual. So defense mechanisms, they actually create a false sense of security. A lot of times they show up whenever there's really a trigger, so like a word or anything that kind of sets us off, and then our defenses go up. So this is our defense mechanism. So when our defense mechanism is up, it doesn't allow us to see the other person, it doesn't allow us to hear them, and it doesn't allow us to be open to them and try to understand anything. And it's really just an emotional reaction that we have. And a lot of times those triggers are tied to experiences that we've had that were maybe not favorable, and we don't even realize how a certain word or phrase like sets us off. But at the same time, it's important to be aware of them if you want to be able to have better relationships, because this definitely stops people from having good relationships, because it cuts off your communication. And I mean, how do we expect to be in relationships with each other but don't communicate? It doesn't really work that way. So what I have written down here are triggers activate an unconscious protective measure that allows us to cope with unpleasant emotions. When we live this way, it can actually reduce the effectiveness and development of our emotional process. So because we react off of that emotion and our defenses go up, it doesn't allow us to deal with those emotions that are behind that. So we're pretty much emotionally arrested because we're not dealing with the problem. Our reaction is actually a symptom of the problem, the root cause of it. So the first defense mechanism that I have is going to be denial. Okay. And that is one of the most common defense mechanisms that we have. And I mean, we all have defense mechanisms. So it's not to single anybody out and to make anybody feel bad for it. It's really just like, it's really a human reaction. But of course, the more awareness that you have, the better that you have the chances of stopping it where it is and actually dealing with those emotions and, saying what's truly on your heart instead of speaking out of anger, because that's what it really allows people to do, is speak out of anger. So when we are in denial, in the denial defense mechanism, there's a refusal to accept reality or facts. We avoid painful feelings or events. We don't want to deal with the emotional impact. It's too much to handle. And the pain accompanied with it brings acceptance. So pretty much what we think or what we believe, it comforts us and it makes us feel good. So whenever we feel like that's being threatened, that's when the defense mechanisms go up, and that's when we start deflecting and being in denial. All right, so the second defense mechanism is repression. Repression is very similar to like in a situation where somebody's like, well, I don't remember that. And it's like, how do you not remember that? We both were there for this conversation and you don't remember that. But that's just an example of how it does work. But repression is unsavory thoughts, painful memories, or irrational beliefs that can upset people. And so they are unconscious, and they hide in hopes of forgetting about everything that goes on. So if something happens and it's just so traumatic or so harmful or so painful that you don't want to think about it, you don't want to deal with it, you repress it. So you push it down to the point where you probably do forget it. And that is actually called there's something that kind of bounces off of that called confabulation. And what confabulation is someone believing a lie. So if if someone was to live in a state where they lied to themselves, pretty much saying that something didn't happen, then they really believe it. And so I'm sure we've all dealt with somebody that's been like that. So I do say the causes are repetitive themes. So if there's someone that says, if there are constantly people that are pointing out things to you like you're angry or irritable often, then that's probably a telltale sign that there's something there that's not being dealt with. And a lot of times repression causes depression, because even though we tell ourselves to forget these things, our body doesn't forget these things. Our body doesn't forget the feelings that are the emotions that are connected to these events that happen in our life. So when they do happen, it's just like walking on a minefield. So that is repression. The third defense mechanism is displacement. So displacement is very common in more into like busy adults, people that are always on the move or always on the go. So the perfect situation example of that is going to be, let's say you got in an argument with your spouse in the house, and you're on your way to work. So you leave, you're at home. So you storm out of home, you get into the car, you get on the street, and someone is taking their time. And so instead of, you directing that anger towards what you were dealing with, you direct it towards this new situation that has been presented to you. So a lot of times it's road rage. A lot of times it shows up as road rage, but really it's just transferring emotion. So pretty much it's like, if I upset you, but you took it out on somebody else, that is displacement, because that is not where that emotion came from, but it's being directed in a different place. So that is a displacement. Anything that can set that off will be a stressful day at work. And a lot of times people end up bringing it home and taking it out on their families, on their spouses, and on their kids. So displacement is definitely a defense mechanism to look out for when you have close relationships that you want to maintain and keep peaceful and happy. So the fourth defense mechanism is projection. I do have that projection is one of the most damaging, and I can attest to this, that it is really damaging, because all projection is it's pretty much when people take what you say the wrong way. So you can be saying something like, from a place of like care, but that person's perspective does not come from the same place of care. So they interpret the words differently than you meant them to mean. And this happens most often in conversations that happen through text, any kind of digital conversation that we have. So just like how words can be misleading, a lot of times we don't read messages in the tone that the person the person that is sending it to us, we read it in our own tone, so how we would interpret it. So that's why it's really important to ask questions. Because if you feel like maybe they meant it that way, what would be the harm in just like finding out, instead of just assuming, okay, they're pretty much trying to say this about me, trying to say that about me. And it's like that could be the complete opposite of what is actually going on with that person. So just ask, it's not that hard. And so for projection, I have that a person becomes demanding and asks a lot of questions. Y'all, I have dealt with this one, and it comes down to like, especially in being in relationships. So it's like that person that asks you a question, but they don't really want the answer to the question. They just want to continue to badger you and be like, well, what is it? What is it? Tell me this. They don't even give you the opportunity to answer the question. So that's when you know that you are up against someone's defense mechanisms, because everything is defensive. They're not open. They don't want to understand. They don't want to hear you. They're not there with you. They're not present with you. So that is going to be a big one for projection. And then there's a lot of passive aggressive behavior with this as well. And just because of the world that we grow up in, passive aggressive behavior is all over the place. But yeah, if you can be aware of, everything that's happening to you as it's happening, you have a greater chance of taking a hold of it and changing it around for good, instead of, letting your emotions control you. You actually learn, and it takes time. You have to put in the work and effort to control your emotions, because it's easy for your emotions to control you. It's actually one of the lowest vibrations that we can live on. So, for somebody that is reacting emotionally all the time, their vibration is low. So, but that awareness helps you get to the next level. All right, so the fifth defense mechanism that I have is regression. And so with regression, this is going to be the person that when they get upset about something, they cry, like they like burst into tears, and it's just like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? So a lot of times they're seen as like the crybaby, honestly, and it's not necessarily that they are a crybaby, but there is something from their childhood or a past memory that is triggered, and it brings up that reaction. And so it could be crying, or uncontrollable outbursts. So if somebody goes from 0 to 100,000, then they are probably dealing with the regressive defense mechanism. Their behavior becomes childlike. So if you've ever been in a conflict where you're like, wow, you're childish, they most likely are being childish, but who wants to hear that? Nobody wants to hear that. And so when you say that to someone and they don't want to hear that, defense mechanism goes up automatically every time. So it says that they stomp off from arguments, slam doors, and give their partner the cold shoulder. And that is a little bit of the passive aggressive behavior because it's actually used as a sign of manipulation, which is never a good thing because we only have control over ourselves. We don't have control over other people and how they react. And so those are the 5 defense mechanisms. Again, those were denial, repression, displacement, projection, and regression. And I'm telling you guys, once you become aware of these things, when they happen and you're able to recognize them in yourself, it makes it that much easier to recognize it in someone else. And it helps you be able to cater to that specific situation. Because if you realize that that's what's going on, you honestly would just react to it the same way that you would react to a child. If a child is having a temper tantrum, you don't just tell them to shut up and go to their room. You actually comfort them. You talk through it. You do what you need to do. And if that is not working, then you remove yourself from the situation. All right. So just make sure you're looking out for those defense mechanisms. And I do have a bonus defense mechanism that I wanted to share with people because people don't really take this one seriously. And I think, honestly, this is one of the most serious. And Robin Williams, I would say, is one of the greatest examples of this defense mechanism. And the defense mechanism is humor. When people experience pain, their way to cope with it is kind of to like make fun of it and make a joke of it. And, certain communities have just made that a thing now where humor is just as widely spread. Oh, it's just joyful. And it's like, no, you're in pain. And so you're not able to express that pain when you put it up as a defense mechanism because people don't see it as that. People see it as just you being a funny person. And you're really a hurt person. You're really in pain. So it's just a cry for help. But thanks for sticking with me through that. And if you guys have any questions, definitely just shoot me a message and let me know what you're thinking. And I'll see y'all later.